Welcome into the New Orleans Saints podcast. You'll hear from players, coaches, broadcasters, and writers that cover the NFL on a daily basis. The New Orleans Saints podcast starts right now. Here's your host, Erin Summers.
Welcome into the New Orleans Saints podcast. Erin Summers here. It is week 15 as the Saints host the Commanders Sunday at the Superdome. The biggest question mark for the Saints surrounds who will be at quarterback after quarterback Derek Carr suffered a broken hand and concussion against the Giants. Here's an update from interim head coach Darren Rizzi.
Derek did not practice today. You guys were out of practice, probably saw that. So he's still obviously dealing with his concussion protocol and the left hand injury. So as I stated on Monday, we're just going to take that situation literally day to day, week to week, as I mentioned. He will not be going on the IR, just to confirm that, and that's going to be like I said, a game by game and really day by day. He's still dealing with some swelling, so we'll see if that goes down and see if he clears a concussion protocol and he's able to do anything at the end of the week. And so both Spencer and Jake both took reps today. Obviously with Derek not being out there, both those guys, took reps in the team periods. That'll probably be the same case tomorrow, and we're just going to evaluate that situation, and we're going to name a starter later in the week. We're not going to name a starter right now. We're going to kind of see how that kind of progression plays out. First with Derek, and then obviously with Jake and Spencer. So that's where we're at with the quarterback situation.
Washington comes in off a bye week, sitting at 8-5 on the season, with playoff hopes hanging on how they handle the next 4 games. Currently, the Commanders hold the 3rd NFC wildcard spot. The squad has looked completely different behind quarterback Jaden Daniels, who has thrown for just over 2,800 yards and rushed for nearly 600. Daniels has 15 touchdowns and 6 interceptions on the season. His go-to is wide receiver Terry McLaurin, who has 9 touchdowns at 896 yards. The big question mark for the Commanders? Will cornerback Marshon Lattimore make his Washington debut back at the home of his former team?
He's friends with a number of guys in our locker room, and so he developed a lot of relationships around here. And so, anytime you have one of those homecoming games, if you will, there's always that little extra, added juice to it, if you will. I know that, when the 3+ hours of that game, Marshon's going to be as competitive as anybody. But at the same time, like I said, he's friends with a lot of those guys in the locker room. They hang out, in the off season. And so there'll be that little bit of ribbing going on and that little bit of, talk, if you will. But at the end of the day, it's all about execution and going out. But yeah, there'll certainly be some of that. I know there'll be a lot of pregame hype and all that. So if he plays, I'm sure there'll be some yapping going on for sure.
For some more insight into the Commanders, let's bring in John Keim, ESPN's Commanders reporter. John, thanks for joining me on the New Orleans Saints podcast. Looking forward to this matchup this weekend. How are you doing this week?
I'm doing all right, coming off a bye, so it's nice to have finally a little bit of time to take a deep breath here.
Yes, and with the team coming off the bye, how do you think that's going to help them coming into this weekend?
Well, I think it'll help them not just this weekend, but for the final 4 games. So it's hard to play in this league. It's the 3rd straight year they've had a mid-December or a December bye. But I think this team is in a pretty good position. But they had some nagging injuries up front. Brian Robinson, the running back, has been in and out with injuries over the last month or so. So I think it was a good chance for them to kind of heal up a little bit and get ready for the stretch run. But I will say the last time they came off an extended layoff was before they played Dallas, and they did not play well. So they're going to have to show that, while it was good to have the time off, that they can respond better this weekend.
You get that bonus practice on Monday, and the team did come in and practice. And I'm hearing a lot of chatter about Marshon Lattimore making his debut with the Commanders and return to the Superdome. Where is he at in getting back on the field?
I mean, they've been pretty cautious with him, I would say. Everything points to him being able to go this weekend. Now, is he going to be full go? I don't know. There was some thought that in the previous game before the bye that maybe he would go for like 10 to 15 snaps. Now, as we talk, is trending toward him playing. And I would expect, the one thing we saw him in practice, he didn't really practice a lot with them until before the Tennessee game, which was their last game before the bye. And that was just in limited fashion. So like from a media standpoint, we never really saw him turn and sprint, just go full go. Now they have. So you didn't really know where he was at. And I think that was the one thing they definitely wanted to see is not just can you do the movements, but can you turn, sprint, and have it still be okay? And I think because of his history of hamstring issues, they're going to be very cautious. But again, everything's trending toward him playing this Sunday.
Yeah, that may have been, the big headline coming into this weekend, just because he obviously was most recently with the Saints, but now it's kind of turned to the Saints quarterback situation with Derek Carr fracturing his hand in this last game. In preparation for this game, how do you think the Commanders are going to handle the uncertainty as far as who's starting?
Good question. And we'll find out a little bit more about that as we go throughout the week, what they're doing. But typically, you're going to prepare for what the offense does and then throw in like, well, this guy likes to do this guy likes to do that. I think the hard part for any team is if there's a dramatic change in style. So if you go from, Derek Carr to, somebody who likes to run around a lot, right? And be that kind of quarterback, I think then you get into a different things you have to be careful of. But I think what they'll typically do is just like, what do they like to call? What are their tendencies? And kind of stick to that. But you do have to then tailor it to who is playing. And certainly that would be part of it. But I think if there's a dramatic change in style, that would lead to more headaches than if it's just hey, this guy likes to do this guy likes to do that.
Style-wise, the Commanders quarterback brings a lot of challenging aspects with the way that he can throw, but also the way that he can run. And that's been difficult for the Saints this year to defend. How has Jayden Daniels been this season, and how impressed have you been with him in his rookie season?
Well, it's funny because you call it a rookie season, which it is. It doesn't feel like he's a rookie, and it never really has, because he's always he always feels like he's been at a more advanced level of play. I think a lot of that, I think the most impressive thing has been what you hear about him away from the field. But it's also like when he was getting in at 5 a.m. in the meetings with his receivers, like that is a big deal. Something he continues to do here, coming in early, getting film work in, doing walkthroughs I had one coach tell me that he goes, I get in here at 6:30 and Jayden and Cliff Kingsbury are coming out of the practice bubble after having done a walkthrough. So like that's the stuff that to me is impressive. I think the maturity that he plays with has been impressive. And I think you could see that early on. So I had Zach Ertz, who's been in the league a long time. I was talking to him before the season in training camp, and we were talking about Jayden. He goes, he's not going to be a good quarterback down the road. He's like, he's a good quarterback right now. So I think they have always felt good about that. But that multi-dimensional threat, as again, LSU fans saw, poses a big factor. And when you watch the Saints, as they give up a lot of those yards because they give up big gaps in their pass rush. And if you do that against Jayden Daniels, he will take advantage.
And that is definitely going to be a point of focus for the Saints this week. They had a little bit of trouble with Drew Lock and the Giants. Jayden Daniels is a different animal there. Offensively, some of the threats that you have there, I guess it's been tough because Austin Eckler has had 2 concussions, so he's been out. It's been a lot of Terry McLaurin and then Brian Robinson. Who else has stepped up offensively to help out?
After that, it's kind of depending on the game. So they have like Noah Brown, a receiver who we don't know about. He's banged up right now. We don't know about his stats for Sunday. He's made some big plays. So you have other guys who in the game here or there will make Olamide Zaccheaus has had a couple games where he's made some plays. But Noah Brown, I'd say, would be the consistent one. Zach Ertz has helped over the middle, not a huge threat anymore, but a consistent guy who can help. And but really it is McLaurin, Robinson, Jayden, Chris Rodriguez, a backup running back, Jeremy McNichols, a backup running back. They've come in and done some things. So it's really been, after those guys, a kind of a mishmash of players who step up and help in whatever particular game they need them. So really it's, I think that's one thing going forward with this offense is you're going to want to have another threat opposite McLaurin, who's a little bit more consistent for them. And, Luke McCaffrey, a rookie, he's a good blocker. It hasn't really been involved in the pass game as much, but he's a guy that everybody keeps saying, like, he gets open. So at some point, he's going to have a couple big games. It just hasn't happened yet. So, it's really been those 2 guys and then see what happens.
Last time the Commanders were on the field week 13 against Tennessee, they ran a lot of 12 personnel. Is that a
Yeah,
trend that you think is going to continue?
that's what Dan Quinn was asked that. So they ran, it certainly was more than they have.
Mhm.
And some of that's going to be matchup oriented, right? And then, but Dan Quinn did say the day after that, he goes, that's trending toward them doing it more. So I think if you want to run the ball more, you're going to do a little bit more of that. And so, yeah, I could see them doing some more of that. But how much more, it's hard to say. Was that a one game thing? Was it a trending up thing? I think we'll find out more as we get down, over the next couple of weeks. To see if that was or not. But yeah, I mean, the day after the game, Dan Quinn said, yeah, that would be something he could see them doing more of because it was successful. And Brian Robinson ran really well out of those looks.
Yeah. Defensively, what are the strengths for the team?
Boy, I will say the strengths would be, I think their linebacker play, Bobby Wagner. Frankie Luvu has been outstanding. So he is an absolute strength. I think they don't stop the run very well, but I think those two have played. The defense overall doesn't stop the run very well, but those two are very big keys for this. Wagner, with his leadership, his communication, he can still play. There's still some things you say, like a couple of years ago, Bobby Wagner probably makes this play. Right now, you wonder, is that what's going, maybe he's not there at this point, but he's still a big time benefit to this defense. Luvu has been a force. Dante Fowler has been a good pass rusher off the edge. I think he's got like 8.5 sacks. So he leads the team in sacks, done a nice job there. I think they're starting to take the ball away a little bit more. I think so that's been a help. The safety play has been pretty good, Quan Martin in particular. And then I think if you look at their corner play, this is why they went and got Lattimore, because they need a guy like him for sure. Mikey Samerstill, who's a rookie, is playing on the outside, better suited inside, but they had to move him outside because they just needed a guy out there. He's been a good rookie for them. He'll give some things up, but he competes. And so I think, to be honest, Aaron, I think what they do really well is they play with an identity. They play pretty physical. They can play pretty fast, but they will give up plays. It's a middle of the pack defense. And I think I don't think they're not a top 10 defense, right? But they do have some things that they do well.
Mm-hmm. At this point in the season, 4 games left, there is that possibility of postseason play for the Commanders. Right now, they hold that last wild card spot. What needs to happen over these next couple weeks to make sure that they get in?
Well, I think you look at the offense, because that's been the controlling factor all year. When the offense does well, they're going to be in good shape. So to me, that comes back to the run game. So that's Brian Robinson and whomever, but really Brian Robinson staying healthy and powering that, because when they have the run game going, it's just a different offense. They don't want to rely on Jake Daniels dropping back 35 times a game to throw. I think that 25 to 30 range is really, really 25 range, especially, is good for this offense. But they do want to. But I think running the ball is the big time key, and then defensively taking the ball away a little bit more, but not giving up the explosive plays. And so, like, if they can do that, then I think they'll be in good shape.
How has this year felt? Just around the facility with the new quarterback and everything that's been going on this year, obviously improved on the field as well.
It's funny, Aaron, because like that's been a big question this year, is how different is it? And if you say it's like night and day, I don't think that adequately describes the difference in the organization or around the facility. It's almost like, and I guess it's the difference between the sun and the moon. It's just that dramatic. So part of that stems from, you have a new owner that was felt last year, right? And then the change in the hierarchy with Adam Peters as GM, Dan Quinn as the coach. Quinn and his staff bring a ton of energy. And then you bring in about 60% of this roster was turned over. That makes a difference. And then you get Jake Daniels as the final piece of a guy, like not just a young player, but a guy that, as you know, like any young quarterback gives you hope. And I think that's what they have with him as much as anything. So I think but before we even knew what kind of quarterback Daniels was, you felt the other parts of the change. And you knew that would help them. You just didn't know when. And so I do think it's a different organization. It's like the Dan Snyder Redskins / football team / Commanders. That's dead. This is almost like a new franchise because of all the changes.
Yeah, I mean, there was a lot of history with the previous entity. It had been a while, but it does feel like this is good for the league in general to have a new, refreshed
Yeah,
team there in Washington.
I would agree, because it's been a long time, and they were losing the fan base. If they hadn't changed, if there was no ownership change, you're not sitting here with this. We're not having this discussion because Dan Snyder was not a good owner. All sorts of problems. The fan base had eroded big time. They weren't happy about the play. They weren't happy about the name change, about anything with this organization. So you're right, and I think in the nation's capital, and for a historic franchise, you needed something better. And so I think you're right. This is a good thing for the league, to have a team in Washington, and to have a quarterback like Jaden Daniels in particular in this city.
Makes me a little nervous this weekend having Jaden Daniels come in as a former LSU quarterback and being so close to Baton Rouge. And I don't know what the fan base is going to be like, who they're going to be cheering for. I know we have diehard Saints fans here, but I'm sure there will be some fans that trickle in cheering on Jaden Daniels. What are your expectations for the atmosphere?
Oh, that's a good. And I would expect that there would be some people who are going to be. You can root for Jaden Daniels and still hope the Saints win, I guess. And then you may have, trickle, you always get a decent number of Washington fans who like to travel, especially to a place like New Orleans, a fun place. And maybe there's not as, been a tough year for them, as you know, so maybe more tickets are available for them. I don't know. So I would think it'd be a fun atmosphere just because of, I think, the electric play that Daniels can bring and what he meant to LSU, which of course is close by. So, I think with that, that's the thing. And this goes back to your previous question, and I was talking to our Baltimore reporter, Jameson Hensley, back when Washington played the Ravens. And he was talking about how, like, when the Ravens were really good, they weren't as nationally popular, partly because it's hard to sell, just, build it off of Ray Lewis and the defensive identity. It was when they got Lamar Jackson that they elevated, like, their stature nationally. And I think you're going to start to see that with Jaden Daniels, so wherever they go, you're going to have Jaden Daniels fans showing up.
Yeah, that definitely makes sense. For this game Sunday, what do you think it's going to come down to?
Oh, I think for Washington, just making sure you play efficient on offense, because you wonder about what can the Saints do offensively against them, even though, like I said, the Commanders' defense isn't necessarily great, but can they threaten them consistently enough? I think that'd be hard. So do you play efficient on offense? Can you run the ball? And I think for Daniels, what kind of plays are you making? Because you watched Jameis Winston a few weeks ago. Again, same thing where you have these gaps in the pass rush. You step up, you keep your eyes upfield, you have big plays available. So Daniels has been better at keeping his eyes upfield as he gets out of the pocket. Is he hitting some of those big plays down the field, which I think will be available? So, not, this sounds cliche-ish, but this is a wounded team. Don't give them an opening. That's not a bad defense, right? So, but you can't turn it over and give them short fields. So just being efficient, run the ball, but hitting those big plays, I think they'll be available.
How's the kicking situation there with the Commanders? Because kickers, since Darren Rizzi has taken over, have had some trouble.
Yeah. Well, it's been up and down. So they had Austin Seibert, who was going great for a while. Then he hurt his hip, came back and missed a couple. So, he then went on IR, and they have Zane Gonzalez. Well, he missed a couple kicks against the Titans. So, but he's going to be their kicker, and you would hope kicking indoors would help him. But yeah, you see that stat, like, there are kickers all over the league that are having some unusual problems this year, which is kind of weird to see. But I think, like a lot of teams, that Gonzalez had been pretty good in the first couple of games he was here, kicking in place of Seibert. And then in Tennessee, it's like, is he kind of reverting to form? So it will be interesting to watch. I think that's definitely something that you keep your eyes on here if you're a Washington fan.
I appreciate the time. Thank you so much. Look forward to seeing you this weekend.
Sure thing, Erin. Thanks for having me on.
Appreciate John joining us. Want to give a shout out to defensive tackle Brian Brzee as he won the NFC Special Teams Player of the Week honor for Week 14. Brzee blocked that potential game-tying field goal with 11 seconds remaining to secure the win, 14-11 for the Saints over the Giants. This is the first career Special Teams Player of the Week award for Brzee, and he becomes the first Saints non-kicker or punter to win Special Teams Player of the Week in the past 5 seasons.
Hey, Brian, congratulations first. Did you think your first Player of the Week was going to be special teams?
No, no, not at all. They said I think this might be one of the only times a D-tackle got the award. So, no, but super excited about it.
Yeah. What about the year you are having at defensive tackle? I mean, 7.5 sacks, you lead the team. What were the things that you changed in the offseason to make yourself improve?
Yeah, I mean, I think just having another year under my belt, a lot of it just comes with live reps, and you can't really get that unless you're playing. So, having a full year now, and then, almost done. Year 2, we're on the back end of it. So, man, just having more time to work at my craft and really, have other guys in the room that have done it for a while kind of show me the right ways to go about my business. And so they've been a big help.
Had it slowed down for you at the end of last year because the production started to rise at the end of the year? Yeah,
I think so. I think just understanding just football better. I came from a lot different scheme in college than I played here, so man, just starting to understand that and knowing what my job was, and then eventually getting over to what offenses we're doing and what could help me, be my best in our defense.
I know defensive tackle, sacks aren't always the marquee stat, and yet here you are with 7.5. How, impressed are you with what you've been able to do on the interior?
Yeah, I mean, it's been great, but, a lot of that also goes to the DBs, covering, and then, man, a lot of those sacks are off games and other things with my D-line who's done a great job as well, just caging quarterbacks and setting things up.
Don't forget this NFL season, you can feel every play, every hit, every moment with the Sony 1000 XM5 noise-canceling headphones, the official headphones of the New Orleans Saints. With premium noise cancellation, you're in the zone, no distractions, just pure football. Whether you're in your living room or on the go, you'll never miss a beat with Sony headphones. Our next podcast is coming up on Friday. We'll have a current player and a former player join us, so you're not going to want to miss that one. Thanks for tuning in right here on the New Orleans Saints podcast.
Thanks for listening to the New Orleans Saints podcast. Join us 3 times per week on NewOrleansSaints.com, the Saints mobile app, or you can download the podcast on iTunes. We'll see you next time, right here on the New Orleans Saints podcast.